In the winter of 1933, while millions of Americans stood in breadlines and the Great Depression strangled the soul of the nation, a group of the world's most powerful billionaires met in a smoke-filled room in New York City. They weren't there to save the economy. They were there to end the United States as we know it. Their plan was simple: recruit 500,000 war veterans, march on Washington, D.C., and replace the president with a corporate-controlled dictator. Backed by the fortunes of J.P. Morgan, the DuPonts, and the heads of the largest banks on Wall Street, this was the business plot, the most dangerous corporate coup d'etat in human history. They had the money, they had the weapons, and they had the motive. There was only one thing they didn't count on: the unbreakable honor of the man they chose to lead them. Welcome to History's Echo. We strip away the layers of corporate propaganda to reveal the cold, calculated mechanics of power that run our world. We follow the paper trail to the darkest corners of the boardroom and the battlefield. Today, we go back to the moment the American Republic almost became a corporate colony. The fear of the billionaire class. The year was 1933. The American economy was in a state of absolute collapse. Franklin Delano Roosevelt had just been elected, promising a New Deal that would tax the rich, regulate the banks, and empower the working man. To the titans of Wall Street, the men who owned the steel mills, the oil refineries, and the banks, FDR wasn't a savior. He was a traitor to his class. They feared that America was turning towards socialism, or worse, communism. In the eyes of the elite, their massive fortunes were under threat. The J.P. Morgan family, the DuPont chemical empire, and the executives of Chase Bank saw the gold standard being abandoned and their monopolies being challenged. They decided that if democracy no longer served their profit margins, it was time to move beyond democracy. They began to look at Europe, where Benito Mussolini in Italy and Adolf Hitler in Germany had successfully replaced chaotic republics with efficient fascist regimes that worked hand in hand with big business. They wanted an American version of this, a corporate fascism. Recruiting the General Coup needs more than just money. It needs a face. It needs a leader that the masses will follow. The conspirators looked for the most respected military figure in the country. They found him in Major General Smedley Butler. Butler was a legend, the most decorated Marine in history, a two-time Medal of Honor recipient. He was known as the Old Gimlet Eye, a man of the people who was beloved by his troops. The conspirators believed that because Butler was critical of the government's treatment of veterans, he could be bought. They sent a wealthy bond salesman and former commander of the American Legion, Gerald McGuire, to approach the general. Over a series of secret meetings in luxury hotel rooms, McGuire began to unveil a shocking proposal. He claimed to represent a committee of concerned citizens, backed by $300 million in corporate funding, equivalent to nearly $7 billion today. The 500,000-man army McGuire's plan was audacious. He told Butler that they wanted him to lead an organization of 500,000 World War I veterans known as the Bonus Army. The idea was to frame it as a protest against the government's failure to pay war bonuses. But once the veterans were gathered in D.C., the protest would turn into a demand for power. The veterans would be well armed, funded by secret shipments of weapons from the DuPont factories. McGuire explained that Roosevelt would be given an ultimatum: step down and become a ceremonial figurehead, or be forcibly removed. A new position, the Secretary of General Affairs, would be created to actually run the country. This person would be chosen by the business elite. In essence, Roosevelt would stay as the face of America, while Wall Street would pull the strings. It was the ultimate Vichy-style government, designed to preserve corporate profits at the cost of the Constitution. The paper trail of greed Smedley Butler was a brilliant strategist. He realized that if he simply said no, the conspirators would just find someone else. So he played along. He began to document every conversation, every name, and every financial detail McGuire provided. McGuire bragged about his connections to the American Liberty League, a high-powered political group funded by the heads of General Motors, Standard Oil, and Birdseye. Butler discovered that the conspiracy went deep into the heart of the American financial system. He found that the conspirators were already using their influence to manipulate the press and the stock market to create a sense of crisis, making the public desperate for a strongman to take control. This was a masterclass in manufactured consent. a business strategy applied to the destruction of a nation. The plotters didn't care about the people. They cared about the stability of their investments and the elimination of labor unions. The whistleblower. In November 1934, General Smedley Butler did the unthinkable. He didn't lead the army to Washington. He went to the House McCormick-Dickstein Committee, the precursor to the Un-American Activities Committee. Under oath, he laid out the entire plot. He named names. He identified Gerald Maguire, the Grayson MP Murphy banking firm, and the corporate giants backing the coup. "I appeared before the committee," Butler famously said, "because I believe that the people of the United States should know that their government was almost sold to a group of bankers." The testimony was explosive. Butler described how he was offered money, power, and fame if he would only betray his oath. He told the committee that he had spent 33 years being a high-class muscle man for big business, protecting their interests in China and Central America, and he refused to do it on American soil. The great corporate cover-up. What happened next is perhaps the most chilling part of the story. While the committee initially found Butler's testimony to be alarmingly credible, the mainstream media, much of it owned by the very men Butler had accused, began a massive campaign of character assassination. The New York Times and Time magazine called the plot a cocktail party fantasy and mocked Butler as a deluded old man. Despite the fact that the committee's final report stated that they had confirmed the existence of a plot and that Butler was telling the truth, not a single billionaire was arrested. No one from J.P. Morgan was questioned. The DuPonts remained untouched. Gerald Maguire died mysteriously shortly after the investigation. The government, fearing a total collapse of the banking system if they prosecuted the nation's richest men, chose to bury the report. The business plot was erased from the history books, hidden away as a minor incident rather than the existential threat it truly was. The legacy of the Shadow Empire. The business plot of 1933 proved that for the corporate elite, loyalty to the flag is always secondary to loyalty to the dollar. While they failed to overthrow the government with an army of veterans, they realized that they could achieve the same goal through more subtle means: lobbying, campaign contributions, and the takeover of the media. Smedley Butler spent the rest of his life writing "War is a Racket," exposed how the military-industrial complex was designed to generate profit for corporations at the cost of soldiers' lives. Today, as we see the influence of dark money in politics and the rise of corporate power over global policy, we are seeing the modern version of the business plot. The conspirators of 1933 didn't lose. They simply changed their tactics. They learned that you don't need to march on the White House if you can just buy the people inside it. Smedley Butler saved the American Republic in 1934, but who is guarding the gates today? The business plot is a ghost story that remains a living reality in the world of high finance. It is a reminder that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance against those who see democracy as a barrier to profit. This is History's Echo. If you found this revelation powerful, hit the like button and subscribe. We are the voice for the secrets they want you to forget. Turn on notifications and join our community in the comments. Do you think a corporate coup could happen in the modern era?